I became interested in Lauren's case almost immediately when I heard an initial report from another true crime YouTube channel in mid-January of 2019. I started reading any information I could find on the case, and the more I searched, the more shocked and suspicious I became at the lack of information out there on Lauren or her disappearance. How does someone in this day and age just vanish into thin air? Not only Lauren, but hundreds of other lost souls in the state of Texas. This lack of information that I wasn't finding seemed to fuel a fire inside of me, and I felt compelled to find out more. So I started digging. I spent many a late night contacting friends and family members on Lauren's Facebook page and began asking as many questions as they would answer. Over the next year, I would find myself so deeply involved in this case that I sometimes felt as though I had a strong personal bond with Lauren, even though I never knew her or spoke to her. I'm beginning this series, Lauren Revisited, to give you the details and facts that I have learnt about Lauren Colvin Thompson and the people that she surrounded herself with in the months leading up to her disappearance near the small Rock Hill community just outside of Beckville, Texas. There will also be room at the end of each episode for some speculation on the case, although I'm intentionally leaving out highly speculative content so as to try and keep the case on track and on point as much as possible. My goal is to clear up some misinformation that has been spread and to hopefully expose some small tidbits that will jog someone's memory in a way that might provide law enforcement with what they need to help bring Lauren home. On the afternoon of Thursday, January 10th, 2019, Tori Colvin received what would normally be a welcoming phone call from her only daughter, Lauren. But something was different about this call and this day. Around 2 p.m, Lauren Thompson called her mother for what would prove to be the last time Tori would ever hear her daughter's voice. Lauren was calling to speak to her children who had recently gone to live with their grandmother in Fort Worth, Texas, to tell them that she loved them and to tell her dad, Greg, that she was sorry. She also told Tori she wished that she could have been as strong as her. Tori later made a statement, and this is what she said in regards to that final call. To whom it may concern, this is my statement that was given to the Panola County Sheriff's Office the day my daughter Lauren Thompson disappeared. 20 minutes before she called 911, I received a phone call from her. She sounded panicked and said, "Mom, I need to speak with the kids." I told her the kids were at school, and she said, "I need to tell them that I love them." She also said, "I love you, Mum. Please tell Dad I love him. I'm sorry for everything." I told her, "We love you." She then said, "Why couldn't I be strong like you, Mum?" I told her, "You can be as long as you stay away from the drugs." She said, "I can tell you one thing. If I ever get out of this, I will never do drugs again." She said I needed to talk to Brooklyn. I told her she was asleep, and she said I need to tell the kids I love them. In the background I heard what sounded like a black man saying, "You don't need to be calling," and she cut him off, hollering back at him, saying, "I don't need to tell my kids I love them. I don't need to tell my kids. I love you, Mum. Please tell Dad I love him. I'm sorry, Mum." This call was interrupted by someone Lauren was with, as Tori heard them tell Lauren she didn't need to be on the phone. Tori was concerned about the phone call, but she didn't know who the other voice was, and she was just waiting, hoping she would hear from Lauren again. She thought that the voice on the other end of the call sounded like a black man, as well as Lauren saying, "Please help me, they're shooting at me," and Lauren saying the words, "Please, baby," like she was having a dialogue with someone she knew well. Tori went to bed that night with no idea what she would be faced with when she woke up the next morning. On Friday, January 11th, Tori and Greg received a call from Panola County Sheriff's Office that would be the beginning of a nightmare that has still not come to an end. Panola County Sheriff's Office had been actively searching during and after the 22-minute 911 call that dispatchers had received just minutes after Lauren's last call to her mum the day before. Lauren had been living in Carthage, Texas, with her then-current boyfriend, Patrick Berry, since a breakup with her ex, John Bandy, that occurred around 4 months earlier in September 2018. Bandy was the reason she had moved to Carthage, Panola County, in the first place. Law enforcement had already spoken to Berry and Bandy, and they both stated that they had not seen or heard from Lauren. Law enforcement informed Tori that Lauren had placed a call to 911 stating she was in fear of someone chasing her. The officer stated that Lauren sounded disorientated and confused. Even though the last call Tori had received from Lauren was not typical, she herself would not have used these words to describe Lauren's behaviour. But at the time she could only be relieved and thankful that law enforcement was searching and trying to find her daughter, or so she thought. Even though Josh Jenkins from the Texas Rangers says that Lauren identified herself as Lauren Thompson 2 minutes into the call, Tori says that law enforcement were initially looking for the wrong person on January 10th and part of January 11th. This is the response from Josh Jenkins of the Texas Rangers in regards to this. I am not sure where this information came from. I do recall Lauren's mother, Tori Colvin, asking this question also. I'm not sure if this was miscommunication on someone's part or part of the rumour mill. During the 911 call, Lauren identifies herself to 911 dispatchers as Lauren Thompson 2 minutes into the call. It's important to note Lauren called her mother moments prior to placing the 911 call. To my knowledge, Lauren's behaviour did not prompt her mother to call law enforcement and report her behaviour. The phone call Lauren placed to her mother lasted roughly 7 minutes. Even though this piece of information does appear to be speculative, it does come directly from the family, and it is worth noting that the family did have trouble with Panola County Sheriff's Office not responding to their calls as often as the family had hoped that they would, and it did get to a point where Sheriff Lake did verbally, I don't want to say attack, but did get verbally frustrated with Tori, and so we may never know where this information came from, if the Texas Rangers aren't aware of it, or if the Panola County Sheriff's Office aren't talking to the family in an open and honest dialogue. This person that they were looking for is reported to be a Laura Singletary, who is also a mother living in Carthage, Texas. It is still unclear as to how this huge mistake could have even happened in the first place, but upon checking one of Singletary's 6 Facebook accounts, a post from one of her children suggests that she too had previously gone by the last name of Thompson. And this is about the only piece of information that I can find that might explain how that happened. Law enforcement asked if Tori had spoken to Lauren or if she knew where Lauren was, but she was unable to provide them with anything that could assist law enforcement in their search. We've all heard time and time again that the first 24 hours are critical in a missing persons case. I've always wondered how things may have turned out differently if law enforcement had been looking for the correct person during those first crucial hours of this case. If Tori had realised that Lauren was calling her to give her last goodbyes, would she have done things differently? Would she have called 911 herself? Would she have driven to try and find her daughter right then and there? I'm sure these are all questions that have crossed Tori's mind many times, and that will haunt her until the day Lauren is found and brought home to her family. We're not completely sure how Lauren's day started on January 10th, 2019, except that there are reports that she was shopping for birthday presents for one of her children with Ricky Briggs at a Family Dollar store in Beckville. Ricky Briggs was later to have been reported to be in the car with her, along with Linda Moore and her daughter Shelley Moore, also known as Shelley Tipton or Shelley Stone. Ricky Briggs died several months after Lauren's disappearance from cancer, so any answers he may have gone to the grave. What we do know from the Texas Rangers from Panola County Sheriff's Office and directly from Linda and Shelley themselves is that on the afternoon of January 10th, they went to Ricky Briggs' house. Now, the accounts do differ between Shelley and between Linda, both of whom I interviewed, and both Linda and Shelley freely admit that they went down to Ricky Briggs to do meth. There is a big methamphetamine problem in Panola County, as is everywhere, but particularly in Carthage, when there's not a lot to do. So Shelley says they went down there to go fishing and borrowed a fishing rod from someone and went down to the river to fish. I can't play the entire audio here because the combined audio is hours long. So Shelley doesn't admit to driving erratically and doing donuts around Lauren. Lauren seemed to be jittery, upset, and she said that she was trying to, calm her down, but she didn't mention any of this. Then when I spoke to Shelley's mother, Linda, she said that Shelley was antagonising Lauren by doing donuts around her, and of course this didn't ease Lauren's nervousness at whatever was going on. And this in turn somehow made Shelley run into a ditch and get stuck, and her car had to be pulled out. After this, and before the phone call to her mother and to 911, Lauren ran into a ditch, or was she run into a ditch, and it was reported with those that were with her that she got out of the car and took off into the woods running. There was no mention of any other parties there, no black man talking to her or following her. At that time, we didn't know that Shelley, Ricky, and Linda were all back at Ricky's house when law enforcement turned up, which was rather quickly from previous reports. We didn't know back then that they were there at Ricky's whilst Lauren was still on the phone. So did they personally have anything to do with her disappearance? No. And that is something that we can say now, in hindsight, having that information from the Texas Rangers. The following footage has never been released and was recorded last year on October 31st, 2019 in Lake Charles, Louisiana, between myself, Karen, and Tori, Lauren's mum. I include this at the end amongst speculation, even though it comes directly from family, because since recording this and talking to the Texas Rangers, I've learned a lot about the interpretation of the evidence. So what one person might hear or not hear, another person hears or doesn't hear something different. And so this is just part of the footage, and I will continue with the full recording on the next episode when we talk about the pings from Lauren's phone and more about the 911 call.
You know for a fact that he admitted that there were gunshots on the 911 call?
He admitted that in the
when was it?
it was your interview one. Tori, your interview with Channel 19. It was in that.
Just 20 minutes later, Lauren made a frantic 911 call, claiming she was being chased and someone was shooting at her.
I gotta go back and listen to that because guess what? We didn't hear any gunshots. And
What?